always believed that betrayal would come with warning signs. A sudden change in tone, eyes that no longer met mine, or silence that stretched too long across a dinner table. But I was wrong. Sometimes, betrayal is quiet, calculated, and wears the face of someone you called family. 1 week before I signed the divorce papers that ended my 42-year marriage, I discovered the truth. My husband had been sleeping with my daughter-in-law. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I smiled, and what followed shattered every expectation they had of me. That morning, the sun streamed through the kitchen window like any ordinary day, brushing over the pale blue tile I'd scrubbed for decades. I had just finished setting out the china, ivory with a golden rim, used only for guests or moments I wanted to feel special. The house was too quiet now. At 65, after a lifetime spent building a home, I had grown used to the silence. But today was different. Ivy had called early in the morning. Her voice, usually upbeat and polite, was strained, her words hesitant. "Can I come by, just us?" she'd asked. Ivy wasn't someone I spoke to often. She was my daughter-in-law's older sister, polite but distant. So her request felt odd. I tried to dismiss the knot forming in my stomach. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she just needed advice. I smoothed the tablecloth, laid out the cucumber sandwiches, and cut a fresh slice of lemon cake. Her favorite, or at least that's what she'd said once at Easter. The past few months had been a fog. Martin, my husband of 42 years, had become a ghost in his own home. Late nights, longer business trips, empty glances. And our son, Joel, had become a stranger too, tangled in the glow of his marriage to Lila. Visits from them were now formality, not affection. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. I opened it to find Ivy standing on the front step, her dark eyes swollen and red. Her makeup, normally pristine, was smudged beneath her lashes. She looked like she hadn't slept. "Clara, thank you for seeing me," she murmured. "Of course, dear. Come in." I stepped aside and guided her toward the dining room. She sat down slowly, her purse clutched tight in her lap. I noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she set it down. "I made lemon cake," I offered, sliding a plate toward her. She didn't touch it. Her eyes stayed fixed on her hands, her fingers locked together like she was holding something inside. "Ivy, what's wrong?" I asked. "You look like you've seen something horrible." She looked up at me then, and what I saw in her eyes stole the breath from my lungs. Guilt, grief, and something deeper. Shame. "There's something I need to tell you," she whispered. "And once I do, nothing will be the same." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just waited. "It's about Lila and Martin." My heart began to pound, but my face stayed calm. "What about them?" Ivy closed her eyes, and the words spilled out fast. "They've been seeing each other. I saw them. I saw them at a cafe near Martin's office. Holding hands. Kissing. They were acting like lovers." My throat tightened, but my hands stayed still in my lap. "Are you absolutely sure?" I asked, my voice softer than I felt inside. She nodded, her face crumpling. I confronted Lila. She didn't deny it. She laughed. She said it wasn't my business. "But Clara, the things she said about you." My heart split in two. "What things?" "She said you were old. That Martin deserved someone exciting. She said once the divorce was final, she'd make sure you got as little as possible. She said she was going to live in your house. She planned it all." I didn't blink. I didn't cry. I looked at the garden outside the window. Roses blooming wildly across the back fence, the ones Martin and I planted in our early years. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. Ivy reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. "Because it's wrong. Because you were always kind to me. Because Joel doesn't deserve to be married to someone like that. And because I couldn't sit back and watch Lila destroy the only family I've ever cared about." I didn't know what to say. I only stared at our hands, hers young and smooth, mine weathered with years. Then finally, I pulled my hand away and stood. "I'm not going to do anything," I said. Ivy looked shocked. "What?" "Nothing." I turned toward her slowly, and though my voice was calm, it held a strength I hadn't felt in years. "I'm going to smile. I'm going to play the part of the gentle wife and loving mother. And I'm going to let them think they're winning." "Clara," she said softly. I looked her in the eyes. Some games require patience. And I've been patient a long time. She nodded slowly, realizing she was speaking to someone who had just made up her mind. Does Lila know you came here? No. She thinks I'm at work. Good. Let's keep it that way. What about Joel? She asked. What about your marriage? I poured myself a cup of tea and smiled. Some battles aren't won with confrontation. Some are won by letting the enemy believe they've already won. Later that night, Martin came home. I was in the kitchen, cooking his favorite, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes. The same meal I'd made every Friday for over 30 years. Smells good, he said, loosening his tie. Rough day at work? I asked sweetly. He shrugged. The usual. As he went upstairs to change, I stood over the stove, stirring slowly. My hands calm, my heart steel. I knew everything. But I would let him believe I knew nothing. Because the moment they thought they'd won would be the moment I'd make my move. The next 3 days were like walking barefoot across broken glass. Every smile I forced, every polite exchange I endured, sliced a little deeper. Yet I carried on, blending into the role they expected me to play. Naive, old, fragile. But behind every smile was a calculation, every glance a strategy. I studied them the way I used to study the roses in the spring, looking for signs of rot, pruning what needed to go. Sunday dinner was our tradition. Every week, Joel and Lila would come over. It had started as something sweet, a way to keep family ties strong, but lately, it had become a performance. One I had to sit through, pretending not to notice the subtle shifts. The extra glances. The lingering touches. The familiar perfume that now followed my husband home. That Sunday, Lila arrived first. She walked in like she owned the house, wearing a dress that practically announced its price tag, her makeup flawless, her smile sparkling and false. Clara, you look beautiful, she said, giving me an exaggerated hug. You've done something new with the flowers on the table, haven't you? I held her gaze and smiled. You always notice the details. She sat down at the kitchen island, crossing her legs slowly, like she was settling into a throne. Actually, she said, her voice soft, I was hoping we could talk. Just us girls. My heart beat a little faster, but I kept stirring the sauce. Of course. What's on your mind? She took a delicate sip of the wine I had poured her. I've just been thinking a lot about you. About you and Martin. I turned slightly, just enough to see her expression. You two seem so disconnected lately, she said, pretending concern. I worry about you, Clara. The audacity of it made my skin prickle. But I played along. That's very thoughtful of you. I just think marriage, especially after so many years, can change, she said. Sometimes it fades, you know? The spark goes out. And maybe it's time to think about what would make you truly happy. You think we should divorce? She flinched slightly, but recovered fast. No. I would never say that. But sometimes two people grow in different directions. I gave her a slow nod. That's an interesting perspective. She smiled, her eyes gleaming. Joel and I want what's best for you both. You deserve happiness, Clara. And freedom. Freedom. That was the word she chose, while secretly shackled to my husband behind my back. Thank you, Lila. That's kind of you to say. Her fingers brushed mine briefly. You're such a strong woman. I admire that. I returned her smile and filed away every word, every gesture. She thought she was gently nudging me out of my marriage, making space for herself. I let her believe it. Joel arrived shortly after. Lila transformed like a chameleon, attentive, affectionate, doting. She clung to his arm, giggled at his jokes, and stole glances at the front window every time Martin's car pulled in. When Martin entered, 20 minutes late, Lila's cheeks flushed, and her voice grew lighter. Sorry, I was stuck with the Davis account, he said casually. No problem, Joel replied. We were just talking about taking a vacation. Where to? Martin asked, eyes momentarily flicking to Lila. Somewhere tropical, Lila answered. Somewhere we can escape everything. Her eyes met Martin's just long enough for my stomach to turn. I excused myself to fetch dessert. While I sliced the cake, I heard them whispering, Lila's tone urgent, Martin's low and reassuring. She suspects something, Lila said. She doesn't know anything, Martin replied. I dried my hands and walked back in, humming softly. They were wrong. I knew everything. But I would keep pretending for now. The next day, I met with a new lawyer. Not the family attorney Martin trusted. I needed someone sharp, someone ruthless, someone who didn't belong to our shared social circle. Her name was Evelyn Chong. Tall, smart-eyed, and efficient. Her office was tucked in a quiet downtown building far from anyone we knew. Why haven't you confronted him? She asked after I told her what I knew. Because I want to know what I'm dealing with, I answered. Before I make my move. We spent the next hour reviewing everything. Assets, investments, the house, and most importantly, the family trust set up by my grandfather. This is unusual, she said, flipping through the documents I'd brought. Your grandfather had foresight. This trust has strict inheritance terms. What kind of terms? Your husband can't inherit the house. It's locked to your bloodline. Even in divorce. And if infidelity is proven, the cheating spouse loses any claim to properties tied to the trust. I sat back in the chair, trying not to cry. After weeks of poison and pain, this was the first breath of fresh air I'd felt. So, if I prove Martin cheated, you keep the house, the vacation cabin, several investment properties. He walks away with nothing tied to the trust. And he doesn't know about this? Evelyn shook her head. I doubt it. Most people never read this deep into old documents. When I left her office, I stood on the curb with my coat wrapped tightly around me, and for the first time in months, I felt the sharp edge of power return to my spine. Martin and Lila thought they were playing chess. But they didn't know I had a full set of pieces they hadn't even seen. That evening, Martin acted like the perfect husband. He asked about my day, complimented the roast, kissed me lightly on the cheek before bed. But I saw the cracks now. The fake smile. The constant phone checks. The tension beneath his skin. As I lay beside him, eyes fixed on the ceiling, I knew. They thought they were winning. But the real game was only beginning. I spent the next few days preparing. Not just my documents, but my mind. I needed to be calm, clear, and ready. I smiled a lot. I cooked like always. I folded laundry, swept the porch, and clipped roses for the vase in the hallway. Martin had no idea I'd met with a lawyer. No clue I was building something beneath the surface, brick by careful brick. Then Sunday came again. Our routine. Our trap. Lila arrived before Joel, like she often did now. I could see her through the window as she got out of her car, fixing her hair in the side mirror. She stepped up to the door with her usual bright energy and knocked twice like she lived there. When I opened the door, she leaned in and kissed my cheek. Clara, you always smell like cinnamon and something sweet. I laughed lightly. That's just the apple pie baking. Come in, dear. She walked into the kitchen like it belonged to her. She paused near the sink, where the light caught a crystal vase full of lilies. She touched one with her finger, gently. You always make things feel like home. I gave her a nod, but inside, I was watching every move, every little pause. We talked a little about nothing. Weather, traffic, a neighbor's cat who kept stealing my garden gloves. Then she sat down and said, I've been meaning to ask. Have you and Martin talked about the future? I turned around from the stove, wooden spoon still in my hand. The future. Yeah, I just wonder what your plans are. Retirement, travel, maybe downsizing. Her eyes met mine, curious, too curious. I think we'll figure it out when the time comes, I said, stirring the sauce again. She hesitated. Would you ever consider selling this place? I smiled, steady as ever. This house has been in my family for generations. She laughed lightly. Of course. I just wondered. She looked away, sipping her wine. I've always loved the sunroom. It has so much light. My hands didn't stop moving, but I felt the heat rise in my chest. She was picking out rooms. Joel arrived 10 minutes later, bringing with him a bag of fresh bread from the bakery down the street. He kissed my cheek and hugged me tight. He looked tired. Something about him felt a little off. You okay? I asked gently. He smiled and nodded. Yeah, just a long week. Dinner felt like a play with too many actors forgetting their lines. Lila kept glancing toward the front door, like she was waiting for someone. Joel talked about work but didn't say much. I asked about their trip plans. Mexico maybe, or the Bahamas. Martin came in late again, as usual. Sorry, traffic, he muttered. He kissed my cheek, sat next to Joel, and barely glanced at me after. I served dinner like always. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, steamed green beans. Comfort food. Familiar. But nothing felt familiar anymore. Lila smiled through the whole meal. She touched Joel's arm too often. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny. She acted perfect. But her eyes kept finding Martin's, and when they did, something unspoken passed between them. After dinner, Joel helped me in the kitchen. We loaded the dishwasher side by side like we'd done so many Sundays before. Meanwhile, Martin and Lila sat in the living room, their voices low. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. We can't keep waiting, Lila whispered. She doesn't suspect anything, Martin replied. She's not stupid, Martin. She's just tired. She won't fight this. I dried my hands on a towel and smiled to myself. They were wrong. I wasn't tired. I was watching. I was preparing. Later that night, after Joel and Lila had gone home, Martin stood near the fireplace with a drink in his hand. I sat across the room, knitting quietly. You seemed quiet tonight, he said. Just a lot on my mind. About us. Maybe, I said softly. Maybe it's time we talk. He sat down slowly. I've been thinking the same thing. I think we both want different things now, I said, like I just realized it. His shoulders relaxed slightly. You're not angry? No. I just want us both to be happy. There it was, his first mistake. He thought he had me. Thought I was giving up. If you think that's best, he said, hiding his relief behind a sip of scotch. I do. Okay then. We can do this the easy way. He stood, kissed my forehead, and said goodnight. I sat there a moment longer, listening to the quiet tick of the clock. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd just sign papers and disappear. But I had the trust. I had the truth. And soon, I'd have something else. Everything. The week after that conversation felt like the quiet before a storm. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply got up every morning, made my tea, fed the birds in the garden, and waited. Martin started coming home a little earlier. Probably to make it seem like he was trying. He asked me how I was feeling. He touched my shoulder when he passed me in the kitchen. But I could tell it was all part of the plan. He was playing his role well. I had to play mine better. 2 days later, Martin told me he'd made an appointment with a lawyer. He said it gently, as if he expected me to fall apart. We should try to keep it peaceful, he said. We both deserve a fresh start. I nodded slowly. I agree. He looked surprised, maybe even nervous. You do. Of course. I want what you want. I don't think he believed me. But he wanted to. That was his weakness. He thought I'd go quietly, take whatever little he offered, and move along like a good tired wife. I smiled through it all. I made his coffee the next morning. I folded his shirts just the way he liked. And then I called Evelyn, my lawyer. Everything is in place, she told me. You have the documents, the trust provisions, and the evidence. Now you just need to wait for them to make the first official move. And they did. Martin scheduled a meeting at a firm called Blake & Finch. It sounded professional and expensive. That morning, I wore a soft blue dress, the one I'd saved for special occasions. I curled my hair, dabbed on my rose-scented perfume, and put on the necklace Joel gave me for my 60th birthday. Martin seemed tense as we rode in the car. He kept checking his watch, tapping the steering wheel. We just want to make this smooth, he muttered. I want that too, I said calmly. When we walked into the office, I saw Joel and Lila already sitting in the waiting area. That surprised me. I hadn't known they'd be there. Joel stood quickly. Mom, you okay? I gave him a gentle hug. I'm fine, sweetheart. Lila flashed her perfect smile. We just wanted to support Martin. And you, of course. Of course. The lawyer, Mr. Blake, was an older man with silver hair and kind eyes. On the surface. But I knew enough to see past that. He was Martin's choice. Which meant he wasn't on my side. We sat down in a sleek conference room. The table was long and shiny, the kind of table where decisions are made and people are left behind. Mr. Blake spread out papers in front of me, talking about fairness and dignity. He used a lot of soft words to describe something very cold. I listened. I nodded. I didn't react. He slid a thick folder toward me. This is the proposal. We've tried to be fair considering Martin's years of service and the financial contributions he's made to the marriage. I opened it slowly. I kept my face blank even though my stomach tightened as I read. According to the proposal, I would get a small downtown condo we bought years ago as an investment. Nothing else. No claim to the house. No piece of the business. Just half of one savings account and a small monthly allowance. Martin would keep the house, the business, the vacation property, and most of the investments. I looked at the lawyer. This feels very one-sided. He smiled, polite but dismissive. Mrs. Whitmore, we're trying to be realistic. You're approaching retirement, and we don't want to leave you with responsibilities like property taxes or maintenance. The condo is more manageable for someone in your stage of life. I could feel Lila watching me. Her eyes sparkled like she'd already picked out the new curtains. I see, I said softly. Martin leaned forward. It's better for everyone, Clara. You don't want to deal with all the stress. This way, everything's taken care of. I nodded slowly, then looked at Joel, who was still seated beside Lila. His face looked unsure. Uncomfortable. I suppose this has all been very carefully planned, I said. Martin smiled. Relieved. Exactly. Mr. Blake passed me a pen. You can sign here if you're ready. I held the pen for a moment. My fingers didn't shake. Then I looked up. I won't be needing a second opinion? Of course not, Martin said. It's all simple. I signed each line with calm, steady strokes. My name, Clara Evelyn Whitmore. The same way I'd signed our marriage certificate 42 years ago. When I finished, I gently set the pen down and looked at Martin. I hope this gives you what you're looking for, I said. He gave a small nod, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. Something unsettled. My reaction had been too easy. Too quiet. Lila reached for Joel's hand and gave him a squeeze. I'm so proud of how maturely you're both handling this. I smiled warmly at her. Thank you, dear. That means a lot coming from you. Joel glanced between us, confused. Mom, are you sure? I touched his hand. Sweetheart, sometimes it's best to let things go and trust that everything will work out as it should. We left the office, and Martin offered to drive me home. I declined politely. I wanted to walk. I needed the air. Outside, I watched them drive off together. Martin in the driver's seat, Lila already planning how she'd redecorate my kitchen. They thought it was over. But it wasn't. Not even close. I walked home slowly that day, one step at a time, letting the wind cool my face. Everything felt lighter. Not because I was free from the marriage, but because I knew something they didn't. I had all the documents. I had the truth. And now I had time. Exactly 60 days before the divorce became final. Martin and Lila thought they had one. They thought I'd signed away the house and everything in it. But they didn't know about the trust. They didn't know that this house wasn't just real estate. It was legacy. And legacies don't get handed over to strangers who lie and cheat their way in. That night, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in the living room where every photo still hung on the wall. Pictures of Joel's childhood, our wedding, my mother's birthday party years ago. Every photo now looked like a piece of a lie. Still, I didn't take them down. Not yet. 3 days passed. Then a week. Martin didn't check in. No calls. No visits. Joel texted me once, just a simple, "How are you holding up, Mom?" I replied, "I'm okay. Taking it one day at a time." But then something happened I hadn't planned. Joel showed up at my front door. It was early evening. I was watering the flowers out front when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I turned to see Joel stepping out. He looked exhausted, his hair messy, eyes red, his usual confidence gone. "Joel," I asked, setting the watering can down. "What's wrong?" He walked toward me, slowly, like he was carrying something heavy inside. Can we talk? Of course. Come inside. He sat on the edge of the couch, staring at his hands like he couldn't figure out where to start. I sat beside him and waited. She lied to me, he said finally. Lila. She lied about everything. I didn't say a word. Just let him speak. I found messages, he said. Hundreds of them. On her phone. Between her and Dad. They were planning everything for months. The affair. The divorce. They even laughed about it in the texts. Said I was too blind to see what was right in front of me. He looked like a man who just discovered the world wasn't what he thought it was. I'm so sorry, I whispered, placing a hand on his shoulder. I threw her out, he said. I couldn't look at her. I told her to take her things and go. I nodded. He needed to say it all. She didn't even try to deny it, he continued, shaking his head. She just smirked and said Dad could give her more than I ever could. That cut deep. I saw it in his face. She used me, Mom. And he betrayed both of us. There was silence for a while. Then he looked at me, his eyes filled with tears. How are you so calm? Don't you feel angry? I took a breath. This was the moment. Joel, I've known for a while. His eyes widened. What? I knew about the affair before the divorce. Ivy told me. She saw them together. I didn't tell you because I needed time to think. To plan. To protect what mattered. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I went to a lawyer, I continued. A good one. We reviewed the trust your grandfather left. The one that protects this house, the land, the properties. Your father can't touch any of it if there's proof of cheating. And we have that proof. He leaned back, stunned. You knew. And you let them think they'd won. Sometimes, I said gently, the best way to win is to let the other side show you who they really are first. Joel covered his face with his hands. I can't believe it. I can't believe they did this to us. You're not alone, I said. You were never alone. He nodded slowly. Then he said something I didn't expect. I talked to Ivy last night. She told me everything she saw. She told me she tried to stop Lila. That she begged her to end it before it went too far. I smiled slightly. Ivy was the first to warn me. She risked a lot coming forward. She's not like her sister, Joel said. She's kind. Honest. I saw something soften in his face when he said that. A shift. Not love, at least not yet. But something new. A respect that hadn't been there before. She said she feels guilty, Joel added. For not speaking up sooner. But I told her. She saved me. She did, I said. She saved both of us. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Ivy. She looked nervous, like she didn't know if she'd be welcome. But when Joel opened the door and pulled her into a hug, I knew it would be okay. She stepped into the living room, her eyes darting between us. I'm sorry for everything, she said quietly. I just wanted to do the right thing. You did, I said. You told the truth when it mattered most. Joel looked at her and said, You didn't just tell the truth. You helped us see it. We sat together in the living room for hours, talking. Not about the past, but about what came next. The future. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something rise in my chest that I thought was gone forever. Hope. 2 weeks passed since Joel found the messages. Since he threw Lila out of the house. Since the three of us, him, Ivy and I, finally sat down and faced the truth. Things hadn't been easy, but there was peace now. A quiet understanding between us, built on shared hurt and a need for healing. Joel stayed in touch daily, sometimes stopping by just to sit on the porch with me and drink coffee. Ivy would join us sometimes too. She brought fresh bread or small plants for the garden, always with that nervous smile like she still didn't believe she belonged here. But she did. More than ever. One warm afternoon, as I trimmed the rose bushes near the front gate, Joel's car pulled into the driveway fast. Too fast. The tires crunched sharply over the gravel. I stood, wiping my hands on my apron, and watched him get out. Something was wrong. His face was pale, jaw tight. He didn't even say hello. Just handed me a folder. Ivy stepped out of the car behind him, holding a second envelope. What's going on? I asked, my voice steady, even though my stomach dropped. You need to see this, Mom, Joel said. We walked into the house and sat around the kitchen table. I opened the folder with careful hands. The first paper inside stopped me cold. It was my grandfather's will, but it had been copied and written on. Not by me. I looked closer. It was Lila's handwriting, her loopy, exaggerated script filling the margins with notes about property values, dates, legal loopholes. She'd been studying the trust, trying to figure out how to take something that wasn't hers. I looked up, but Joel just nodded for me to keep going. The next page was worse. It was a timeline, written out in neat lines. It had everything: when she planned to seduce Martin, when they'd push for the divorce, when they'd move into the estate as she called it. She even had notes about how long she thought it would take me to move out. It was all planned like a business project. But the third document made my skin crawl. It was a life insurance policy. On me. I stared at it for a long time. My name. My birth date. But the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. She forged it, Ivy said softly. I checked. The insurance company has no record of you applying for this. Joel was gripping the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. She made herself the only beneficiary. Took the policy out 6 months ago. Said it was just in case something unexpected happened to you. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't just planning to steal from you, Joel said, barely keeping his voice even. She was thinking about what would happen if you didn't make it. We sat there in silence. Ivy handed me a printed email. This is from a private investigator she hired, she said. She paid someone to look into all your financial history. The trust, your routine, even your medical records. I read through the report. It had everything: what time I went to bed, who I spoke to at church, even what route I walked in the garden. She studied me like I was a target, I whispered. Joel nodded. I've already taken all of this to the police. Detective Miller is opening a case. The forgery alone is a crime. My heart hurt. Not for me but for Joel. For the betrayal he had to process from someone he'd once loved. And then Ivy spoke again. Her voice barely above a whisper. There's something else I need to tell you. Something I should have told you weeks ago. Joel turned to her, confused. What is it? Ivy looked down at her hands. Lila's done this before. What? Joel asked. She took care of our Aunt Marjorie 2 years ago. Aunt Marjorie had a heart condition, but it was under control. Then one night she just died. Lila was the only one with her. I felt cold all over. The doctor said it was a heart attack, Ivy continued. But Lila inherited everything. Her house, her savings. And she didn't act like she was grieving. She acted pleased. Joel sat back slowly. Are you saying she? I don't know what I'm saying, Ivy said quickly. But I told Detective Miller. He said they might open a separate case to investigate her death. Maybe even exhume the body if there's enough reason. Before we could say anything else, we heard a loud engine coming up the road. We all looked at each other. That's her, Joel said. We stepped onto the porch and watched as Martin's car turned into the driveway. Behind it, a small moving truck followed. Lila stepped out of the passenger seat, slamming the door. She looked different now. The polished mask was gone. Her face was red, eyes wild. Martin got out slowly, looking defeated. The mover stood nearby, waiting. She actually thinks she's moving in, Ivy whispered. I looked at Joel. Would you mind handling this for me? He nodded. Gladly. I stepped back inside, watching from the front window. Lila stomped toward the house yelling, This is my home. We signed papers. It's ours now. Joel stood firm on the porch. You're not welcome here. This house is protected. You're not taking anything. Martin looked helpless, standing beside the truck. Ivy stepped up next to Joel. It was never yours, Lila. Not the house. Not the family. Not the love. Lila's eyes narrowed. You did this. You turned them against me. You've always been jealous. I'd rather be honest and poor than what you are, Ivy replied calmly. Lila lunged forward, but Joel stepped between them. His voice, calm and loud, echoed through the yard. Get off this property. You have 5 minutes before I call the police. Martin finally spoke. His voice was flat. Let's go, Lila. It's over. But Lila wasn't done. She turned toward the house, spotted me in the window, and screamed, "This isn't over, Clara." "You think you're so clever?" "I know things. I'll ruin all of you." I opened the window just enough and said clearly, "Detective Miller is already looking into your Aunt Marjorie's case. You should focus on your own problems." Lila froze. The blood drained from her face. Martin grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the truck. And just like that, they were gone. Joel and Ivy came back inside. Joel collapsed into the armchair like all the air had left his body. "They're really gone," he said. "The house part is over," I replied softly. "But justice, that's just getting started." That night, the house felt quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not lonely, just peaceful. Like something heavy had finally been lifted. Joel and Ivy stayed for dinner. We didn't talk much at first. We just cooked together in the kitchen, letting the soft sounds of boiling pots and clinking spoons fill the silence. Ivy peeled carrots. Joel mashed the potatoes. I roasted the chicken. It wasn't a celebration, but it felt like one. We had survived something ugly, something cruel. And now, slowly, we were finding our way back to something good. After dinner, we sat in the living room with warm mugs of tea. Ivy curled up on the couch, looking smaller than usual, tired but lighter. Joel sat across from me, staring at the fireplace even though there was no fire burning. "I keep thinking I should feel sorry for her," Ivy said quietly. "She's my sister. You don't have to feel anything you don't want to," I told her. "Lila made her choices. And now she has to live with them." Joel nodded. "She hurt everyone around her. Lied to me. Used Dad. Almost ruined everything. But I think the worst part is that she never once seemed sorry." "She wasn't sorry," Ivy said. "She was just angry she got caught." We sat with that truth for a moment. Then Joel looked over at Ivy. "You tried to stop her. You told me the truth. You didn't have to, but you did." "I should have done it sooner," Ivy whispered. "You did it when it mattered most," I said. Joel gave her a soft smile. "You saved me, Ivy. You saved all of us." I saw something in Ivy's eyes change. A kind of relief, maybe even healing. Joel reached over and gently touched her hand. She didn't pull away. There was something growing between them now. I could feel it. It wasn't rushed or dramatic. It was steady. Kind. Honest. After a while, Ivy stood up. "I should go. Let you two rest." Joel stood with her. "Let me walk you out." I watched them through the kitchen window as they stood near her car. Their voices were low, their faces close. When Joel came back inside, there was a new calm in him. Something strong. "She's remarkable," he said simply. I smiled. "Yes, she is." He looked thoughtful. "I keep thinking about what you said. About letting people show you who they really are." "And?" I asked. "And Lila showed me, again and again. I just didn't want to believe it." "That happens," I said. "We want to believe the best. It's not weakness. It's love." Joel nodded slowly. "But Ivy's been showing me something too. Honesty. Kindness. She doesn't pretend to be anything she's not." "Sometimes," I said softly, "the right people come to you right when you've cleared out the wrong ones." That night, after Joel left, I locked up the house like I always did. But it felt different now. Not like a duty. Like protection. This house was mine again. Not just legally. Emotionally. The next morning, I woke up to a call from Detective Miller. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "I wanted to give you an update before the weekend." "Of course," I said, my heart picking up speed. "Lila has officially been charged with insurance fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit fraud. And that's just the beginning." I sat down slowly at the kitchen table. "And my aunt." Ivy had joined the call, listening quietly on speaker. "We found traces of digitalis in her system," Miller said. "Enough to suggest deliberate poisoning. Not an accidental overdose. Her fingerprints were on the medicine bottles. And we found search history on her laptop. She'd been researching symptoms and dosages for weeks before Marjorie's death." Ivy gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. She really did it," she whispered. We're moving forward with murder charges, Miller confirmed. She's being held for questioning now. Joel walked in during the call, hearing the last part. He sank into a chair beside me, rubbing his face with his hands. What about Dad? He asked quietly. No evidence yet that he was involved in the poisoning, Miller said. But he's facing charges as an accessory in the fraud case. His cooperation might reduce his sentence. Thank you, I said. For everything. When the call ended, we sat in silence. Lila would face justice. Martin would too. But none of it felt like a victory. Just truth finally stepping into the light. Are you okay, Mom? Joel asked gently. I looked at him. At Ivy. At the kitchen we had spent years in, pretending everything was fine. I'm relieved, I said slowly. Not happy. Just relieved that she can't hurt anyone else. Relieved that your Aunt Marjorie didn't die for nothing. Ivy reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you for believing me. For trusting me. You showed me what real strength looks like, I said. You didn't keep her secrets. That takes courage. Joel nodded. We're going to be okay. Not because we avoided the storm, but because we walked through it, together. He was right. We had been tested, hurt, lied to. But we were still standing. Still choosing truth. That weekend, the house filled with voices again. Real ones. Ivy brought over baked goods. Joel grilled chicken in the backyard. We invited the Hendersons from next door and Evelyn, my lawyer, who turned out to love gardening as much as I did. For the first time in a long time, the house felt alive again. Not because it was full, but because it was finally honest. A few months passed. The air grew cooler, the leaves on the oak tree in our backyard turned golden red, and everything around me seemed to slow down in the most beautiful way. For the first time in years, there was no pretending. No whispering in the hallways, no forced smiles, no secrets rotting the foundation of this house. Thanksgiving came. It used to be one of my favorite holidays, when the family was still whole, when the table was full and laughter came easily. But for the past few years, it had been nothing but tension wrapped in tradition. This year was different. I woke up early, just like always. Put the turkey in the oven. Peeled sweet potatoes. Set the table with the same plates my mother passed down to me. But this time, I wasn't doing it out of habit. I was doing it with peace in my heart. Joel arrived first, carrying a pie and a bag of groceries. He wore an apron this time, something I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. His face was calm, stronger, older in some ways. Wiser. Mom, he said as he kissed my cheek. Don't worry, I'm on mashed potato duty. You always were, I smiled. Not long after, Ivy came in through the back door, her arms full of herbs from her little balcony garden. She'd started planting after I gave her a few cuttings from mine. Now she was just as obsessed with mint and basil as I was. She looked happy. No, more than happy. She looked steady. Grounded. And there on her finger was a small silver ring. Joel caught me looking. We got engaged last week, he said softly. I felt my heart flutter in my chest. It wasn't surprise. It was joy. Quiet, lasting joy. I was going to tell you over dessert, he added. I'm glad you told me now, I whispered, pulling Ivy into a hug. I couldn't be happier for you both. We cooked together, all three of us, just like we had done in the weeks after everything came crashing down. But this time there was laughter. Music playing in the background. A dance in the kitchen that started with Ivy tripping over a spoon and Joel spinning her around. It was simple. It was real. As the food finished cooking, there was a knock at the door. It was Detective Miller. Sorry to show up unannounced, he said. I didn't want to interrupt your holiday, but I thought you'd want to hear this before the weekend. We brought him inside and sat him down at the dining table, untouched food all around. Lila has officially been indicted, he said. Insurance fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud, and murder. Ivy gasped. We have the digital records, the poisoning evidence, the forged documents. It's enough. We're moving forward with everything. And Martin? I asked. Accessory. But because he's cooperating, he'll probably receive a lighter sentence. He admitted to knowing about the insurance policy but claimed he never read the details. Still, that won't save him completely. Joel didn't say a word. He just looked down at the table, his fingers tracing the edge of his plate. After the detective left, we stood in the quiet dining room for a moment. "She really did it," Ivy whispered. "She really could have killed you." "She didn't," I said firmly. "Because we stopped her." Joel looked at me, his eyes red. "I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. For not seeing what she was doing. For letting it go so far." "You don't have to be sorry," I said gently. "You were in love. That's not a weakness." We sat down to eat. Finally. Ivy carved the turkey. Joel poured the wine. We toasted to healing. To truth. To beginnings. As the day wore on and dishes filled the sink, I found myself just watching them. My son. The woman who helped save us. The kitchen I thought I'd lose. That night, after everyone had left, I walked through the house slowly, turning off lights. The same ritual I'd done for decades. But now it felt different. Every light I turned off reminded me I still had something worth protecting. When I reached my room, I opened my jewelry box and pulled out my old wedding ring. The gold band was still smooth, the inscription inside still visible. Forever and always. I held it in my palm and whispered, "Forever ended. But I'm still here." I placed the ring back in the box, closed it gently, and turned toward the window. Outside, the wind rustled the tree Martin and I had planted on our 10th anniversary. That tree had survived everything. Storms, heat, cold, and still stood tall. Just like me. A few weeks after Thanksgiving, I sat in my quiet living room with a warm cup of tea in hand and the winter sun slipping through the curtains. Life had started to settle into something soft and peaceful. The chaos that once clouded every corner of this house had cleared, leaving room for something new to grow. Joel and Ivy came by often. Not out of guilt or obligation, but because they wanted to. Joel had started helping me with the repairs Martin used to ignore. Tightening loose cabinet handles, fixing the squeaky step on the back porch. Ivy had planted a small herb garden just outside the kitchen. I caught her talking to the mint plants more than once, laughing to herself. They were making a home here, not just visiting one. And I welcomed it. One evening, Ivy asked if I'd ever thought about doing something with the downtown condo. Part of the divorce settlement Martin thought he'd generously left me with. I smiled. "I have." She tilted her head. "Really? Like what?" "I want to turn it into something useful. A small place where women like me can go when they have nowhere else. Not a shelter. Just a quiet space for rest, safety. A start." Joel leaned forward. "Like a refuge?" "Yes," I said. "That's the word. A refuge." They both looked at each other, and then at me with something like awe. But to me it felt simple. Right. I had been given a second chance, and I wanted to pass it on. Later that night after they left, I sat down at my desk and started outlining my plan. How the space would look, what women would need when they arrived, how to make it feel like a home when they were coming from nothing but heartbreak. The next morning, I called Evelyn, my lawyer. "I want to set up something permanent," I told her. "Legal, structured. Something that can live on even when I'm gone." "You want to create a foundation?" she asked. "Yes," I replied with no hesitation. Evelyn was thrilled. We made appointments. Plans were drawn. I met with people who ran similar programs in nearby towns. They told me stories of women left with nothing, scared, alone. Just like I had been for a moment in time. Only I had resources. And now I could give that to someone else. Around this time, Joel and Ivy officially moved into the guest room while looking for a new home nearby. Ivy spent her mornings helping me in the kitchen, and her evenings reading beside the fireplace with a wool blanket and a cup of chamomile tea. Joel took over yard work, humming while he trimmed hedges and fixed the garden fence. One night, Ivy pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "For accepting me, for letting me stay, for trusting me." I reached for her hand. "You brought the truth. And you stayed when everything fell apart. That's what family does." She nodded, eyes glassy with emotion. "I never had that before." I squeezed her hand. "Now you do." A few days later, Joel sat next to me on the porch swing. The sky was clear and full of stars. "You know," he said, "if all of this hadn't happened, I don't think I ever would have seen who Ivy really is." "You wouldn't have," I said softly. "We only see people clearly when the fog lifts." He looked down. I just feel like I failed. You didn't, I said gently. You believed in love. That's never a failure. The only mistake would have been not learning from it. He nodded slowly. I want to be better. For Ivy. For you. For myself. You already are. In the days that followed, the house felt full of light. Not because it was loud or busy, but because every person inside it cared. Genuinely. Honestly. Then, one morning, Joel handed me his phone. It's a message from Sage, he said, referring to Ivy's old friend, one of the first people who ever saw through Lila. She'd written, "Tell your mother thank you. She gave me courage. I finally left my toxic marriage." Watching what she did, it reminded me I'm allowed to walk away too. I read the message slowly. Then again. This was why I had to speak. Why I had to fight. Why I had to let the world see what really happens when someone tries to burn a woman like me to the ground. She doesn't die. She blooms again. Stronger. That afternoon, while folding laundry, I found something unexpected. A letter. Tucked between towels in the hall closet. It had my name on the envelope. Martin's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Clara, if you're reading this, then you've already made up your mind. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I was weak. I fell into something because I didn't know who I was anymore. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I hurt you. I betrayed our family. And now I'm alone. I'm sorry. Martin. I sat down on the floor, letter in hand. I didn't cry. I didn't tear it up. I just folded it back neatly and placed it in a box marked, past. That's all it was now. The past. I had a future to build. ChatGPT said. Winter melted into spring, and the cold days of betrayal and heartbreak slowly gave way to warmth and color again. The garden, once quiet and neglected, bloomed brighter than it had in years. The lavender I thought wouldn't survive the frost stood tall beside the daisies and marigolds, almost as if reminding me that even things we believe are broken can thrive again with a little care. The condo downtown officially became Clara's place. A refuge for women like me, women who needed more than just a bed. They needed dignity, peace, and the reminder that they were never alone. We started small. 2 rooms, a part-time counselor, and meals delivered by volunteers. But word spread fast. One woman came, then another. And soon, there was a waiting list. Every woman who walked through that door carried a story. Some left abusive marriages, some escaped manipulation, some simply had nowhere to go. But they all had one thing in common. They had reached the edge, just like I had, and decided they weren't going to fall. They were going to climb. I volunteered there 3 days a week, mostly just listening. Sometimes that's all someone needs, a quiet voice that says, "You matter. You are enough. You will rise again." Ivy helped decorate the space. Soft pillows, warm lighting, bookshelves filled with stories of strength and survival. Joel helped with repairs and legal paperwork. It became a family mission, a shared purpose. One rainy afternoon, a woman named Elena arrived. She was around my age. Quiet. Nervous. She clutched a bag that looked like it held her whole life. I welcomed her in, offered tea, and we sat by the window. "I feel like I failed," she said, eyes lowered. 30 years of marriage, and I have nothing to show for it but bruises you can't see. I reached for her hand. "You have your voice. You have your courage. And now, you have a new start." She cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. Later that night, as I walked home through the light drizzle, I realized something. We don't survive because we're lucky. We survive because we refuse to be destroyed. Back at the house, Joel and Ivy were preparing dinner. They were different now, not just in love but in sync. The kind of connection that doesn't come from perfection, but from truth. As we sat at the table, Joel raised his glass. "To Mom," he said, "for showing us what strength really looks like." "To Clara," Ivy added, her eyes warm. "The woman who turned pain into purpose." I laughed softly. "To us," I said. "To truth. To healing. To not letting anyone else write our endings for us." We clinked glasses and ate dinner, surrounded by the hum of safety, love, and second chances. In the weeks that followed, Martin pled guilty to the charges. He received a reduced sentence, but part of the agreement required him to forfeit any claim to the family estate or future financial ties to me or Joel. As for Lila, the evidence was overwhelming. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for 10. Her name was wiped from every document, every record tied to our family. She could no longer touch us. But more than that, she no longer lived in our minds. Her power died the day we chose truth over silence. One afternoon, I stood alone in the backyard, watching the sun dip low behind the oak tree Martin and I once planted. It cast a long shadow, but beyond it, the whole yard was glowing. That tree still stood. Bent a little, scarred from storms. But alive. And so was I. Moral lesson. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals come from those we love most. But pain doesn't get to be the final word. When you choose truth, when you stand tall in the face of lies, you take back your story. You don't just survive betrayal. You build something stronger from its ashes. Never be afraid to start over. Your peace, your worth, your voice, they are not up for negotiation.